wasn't secret, it was shame. Wasn't it?
What?
You were ashamed of it.
It went through my mind, should I tell my wife?
Do you know what happened to Kevin?
Not completely, no. You think, you know, you got the marriage, you got the friendship, you got the closeness, you've got it all, and then all of a sudden there's this great big wall that you didn't know about.
For decades, there was a secret at the heart of British life.
I don't think I told you for years, did I?
You didn't, and even then you still haven't told me fully. I don't want to have that in my head.
It lay hidden in our biggest institutions. And within ordinary families.
She told me not to tell anybody.
I wiped it from my memory entirely.
For how long?
46 years.
But when the truth about one man was revealed, the nation was forced to examine its past, and the secret was out.
It was like releasing the pressure on the slow cooker. It felt good, because now everything was out there.
It was a huge release. A great weight had been lifted from her because she could talk about it without feeling worried, without feeling ashamed.
I'm not ashamed. This is my face. This is what I look like. I have done nothing wrong.
These are the people who broke their silence and changed a nation.
Gone, Tia whispered, her heart thumping so hard it almost hurt. Someone's taken her. But she wasn't going to wait around and find out. Oh, there's a picture. Can you see that?
Yeah.
It's starting to sound quite sad, isn't it?
Yeah, I know what's happened.
Just thinking about what Kitty has to do and give evidence. Someone's going to cross-examine her and try and pick fault and everything, and somebody who loves Katie and wants to protect her, watching her do that and just having to stand back and watch it, it's really hurts.
Yeah. Sorry to compare it to this, but it's a bit like getting married. You know, that nervousness, you know.
Shaking now.
I know. Yeah, I am. Oh, jeez.
Today, Katie will face the man she claims abused her and her friend when she was 9. After 24 years of waiting, she's going to court for his trial.
It's today where I say to the court what happened. A day that I thought would never happen. And it will be over. It will be over, and in that sense, yeah, it'll be a relief, because this has been hanging over my family for too long. I want it out of my life. I want the verdict to be guilty so that he can be on a register and so that children can be protected.
Are we going in the back?
I only want to take one because they'll make me drowsy, but I think I'll need it to give the evidence without me panicking and throwing up. It's my aim not to throw up. Oh, we're here. I didn't realise we were here. There's Nikki.
Joe, I'm just going to get the stuff out the boot, okay?
Alright, yeah, no worries.
Child love.
We've been out.
You can't leave the car there.
Fine.
Katie is one of an ever-growing number of people seeking justice for abuse they say happened when they were children. In the last 4 years, the police have seen a 60% increase in reports of child abuse. That rise can be traced back to events that began unfolding in 2011.
Sir Jimmy Savile's funeral cortege today took him on one final trip round his home city.
He said he had done it all, seen it all, got it all, and if I might add, given it all.
On his headstone will be the epitaph he wrote for himself. It reads, "It was good while it lasted."
I remember the funeral, just not watching it, which was bizarre, because you sort of think, oh, I should be relieved that he was dead. But at that time, I didn't realise that what he'd done to me, that he'd done to other people. Well, actually, I was sort of cross that, you know, I couldn't, like, give him a slap round the face. It was very sad that he died before he was found out.
It was all Savile here, there, all the time. And you thought, when's this man going to go off? Avoid it. That was what we did. Avoid, avoid, avoid.
I couldn't watch it. I just spent the whole time like, I can't listen to what anybody's saying, because that face is there and there and there and there again.
I hate him. I wish he was alive so that he could be punished. I wish he hadn't died. The legacy of what he did bothers me every day.
I need to share now, and I need to talk now.
Back then, it never occurred to me to say anything. Oh, who was going to believe me? Who would believe me?
Karen Ward was one of those watching Savile's funeral at home. She had been writing an online account of years of physical and sexual abuse.
I just wrote an autobiography from the very earliest that I could remember. Just wrote down what had happened. I never had the remotest clue that anyone could download it. But Marion found it, read it. That's what started the ball rolling.
When I moved to BBC Television in the mid-90s, there were people there who'd tell you stories about Savile. Now, I would try and track it down. I never found a victim or a witness, but the stories were everywhere.
For years, journalists had investigated rumours that Savile was a paedophile, but no victim had ever gone public.
I come across Karen Ward's autobiography online, one of these, do-it-yourself writing sites. What she revealed was the abuse by JS, and immediately it's obvious who it is.
Karen described JS as a cigar-smoking celebrity who sexually abused her and her school friends.
This is a fantastic memoir. She's absolutely caught everything that's going on. Now he was dead, I thought we could get her to do an interview, perhaps, if I could persuade her. So I rang up Karen.
And he said, this JS that you mentioned, he said, would I be right in assuming that's Jimmy Savile? And I said, yes, it is. The Savile thing was only a paragraph or two where I was describing Duncroft. Home Office approved school for intelligent but emotionally disturbed girls. Until Jimmy Savile came along, it was the safest place I'd ever been. We used to laugh and giggle about whoever had been out in his car, the things that he did and made us do. We'd say, oh, he's a dirty old man, and we'd go off into screams of laughter. But we'd tell each other what had happened that day. And then, of course, Marion rang me. He was pleasant, but very persistent.
Marion took a team from the BBC's Newsnight programme to meet Karen. It was just 5 days after Savile was buried.
Part of the reason she did the interview was that she was going into hospital for a very serious operation and she thought she might not survive it. So there's an element of that deathbed confession.
What have I got to lose? Doesn't matter if nobody believes me, because I'll be dead.
This footage is the first known filmed interview with one of Savile's victims.
He promised me that if I gave him oral sex, that he would arrange for me and my friends to go to Television Centre and be on his television show.
Going into the story, I'd been not exactly sceptical. I could believe anything was true, but I didn't know that it was true. So I was there to be convinced and persuaded. And I hadn't spoken to her before the interview. I'd read her accounts of what had happened. But it was meeting her and talking to her that that was it then. I absolutely knew that she was telling the truth.
As they left, at the front door, I said to them, look, it's rife. It's bigger than you can possibly imagine, and I don't know how I know that. I think I've forgotten, mercifully, an awful lot more than I remember. But you won't be allowed to go ahead with this. Oh, yes, we will, definitely. I said, you will not be allowed to go ahead with this. It won't happen.
When we left Karen's house, the first thing we said was, what did you think? And we all thought, yes, she was telling us the truth. And it wasn't that long after that, we were driving to the railway station and we put the radio on. And suddenly it was announced that there were to be tribute programmes to Jimmy Savile for the Christmas schedules. And the timing was amazing. And we all started giggling, like nervously, like, oh goodness, they're going to have to pull those tribute programmes.
Can we fix it? Yes, we can.
I'll get together with your own heroes and we'll fix it.
Weeks later, the BBC ran 2 Christmas tributes to Savile. Karen's interview was shelved when the boss at Newsnight took the editorial decision to drop the investigation.
For a long time, I didn't believe they could possibly pull it. I mean, apart from anything else, it was obvious that it would come out anyhow, and that when it did come out, the story then would not be Jimmy Savile was a paedophile, it would be BBC covered up Jimmy Savile being a paedophile.
With the Newsnight investigation dropped, a former detective who worked on the piece, Mark Williams Thomas, took the story to ITV and began working on his own documentary.
We heard that ITV had this documentary that was going to make claims about Jimmy Savile, and they had spoken to some of the women who were making claims about him. Straight away, we knew that this was going to be big, and in the Sunday papers, it got a lot of coverage. Somebody in the newsroom came over and said, we've had an email from a woman who wants to speak to a journalist about Jimmy Savile.
That woman was Dee Coles. She became the first person to appear on television accusing Savile of being a paedophile.
Dee, can you tell me what happened to you with Jimmy Savile?
I think it was just before I was 15, so I was 14, on holiday with my mum in Jersey. And the hotel we were staying in, he had a camper van, quite a large camper van. I was glad I'd spoken out. I was really not glad that I'd taken the beta blockers. I couldn't have done it without, but I felt, when I looked at it, I felt like I was just so detached from it. It being the sexual assault, that I was all quite sort of matter of fact. And it wasn't matter of fact at all. It really wasn't. And that's why I was determined not to take beta blockers today. Because it is messy, and I am a bit of a mess about it. That's how it is. My mum and I were dead close. We would do lots of silly things together. She was like 40 when she had me, and she really, really wanted the best for me. So she sent me to private school. She'd given up a lot for me to be able to do that. The path was set then that I was going to go on to college and go to uni. I was definitely going to be a teacher. Done really well in my exams. And she said, "You and I are going away for a week. Where do you want to go?" I suppose it's quite indicative of the fact it was the 70s. Like, Jersey was abroad and exciting. Yeah, and I chose the hotel. God. We were at our table, my mum and I. People had dressed for dinner, definitely, at this hotel, and he just wandered in like gold shorts and a vest. And so immediately you look, and the cigar. He sort of worked the room, circulated and speaking to everyone, and came to our table. I thought it was exciting. My mum thought it was incredibly exciting. She really did get, you know, she was really starstruck. It was the next day that the assault happened, the next morning. There was one other girl about my age staying with her mum and dad and brother, so we sort of hooked up. It had a back door through the car park to take you to the beach, and that's where Savile was staying, in his motorhome in the car park, so he wasn't actually staying in the hotel. He came out and got this girl to take some photos of me and him. The first two, he's really pulling me into him and sort of thrusting his leg between my legs, and it's, I can tell when I look at the expression on my face, I'm like not comfortable with it. And then the third one I do remember, because he said, oh, he took his vest off and got me to stand behind him, so I was more relaxed in that one because he wasn't like pushing into me. And then we got invited in to see the van, and it was as different as night is from day, just totally, totally changed. Locked the door and pulled me towards him. You know, I think sometimes when people read about abuse, they just think, oh, it's the same as adults having sex, but it's with a minor. And it really isn't. It really wasn't. So I didn't tell my mum what had happened, but I couldn't stand the fact that she was still sort of chatting with Savile. He was still in the hotel, she was still talking to him. And I thought, you must know there's something wrong with me, you must see that. And I don't know, I just really hated her in that moment. It's her job to take care of me, and that hadn't happened. I couldn't tell her. Oh God, I couldn't tell her. And you know, it's only because she's dead that I was able to come forward when I did, speak out when I did. I wouldn't want her to have that image. It's almost like, oh God, this is dramatic, but it's almost like it broke my heart, so why should I break hers with it? I sort of think once was one heart was enough.
Given that you had such a horrendous experience in a caravan by the sea, does it ever strike you as odd that you now have chosen to live in a caravan by the sea?
I've never thought of that. That's really funny. No, because this is total freedom. It's really friendly. I feel really safe. I've always known since I moved here. This is it. Nothing else is going to happen.
Dee's interview with ITV News was broadcast on the 2nd of October 2012. Her claims and further newspaper allegations triggered an immediate public response.
Hazel in Froome in Somerset says, I'm disgusted that everyone is trying to shoot Jimmy Savile down. Jimmy spent his whole life helping other people. He did so much good work. Leave him alone.
All it's doing is maligning a man who, over so many years, had raised well over £40 million for charity.
I'm just surprised that they waited so long to say it. If this is true, why did they not report it to someone beforehand?
And then it just grew and grew. And with that growing, I guess lots of things come out of people having opinions and not everyone being understanding.
One more caller, Jinky is in Burton-upon-Trent, and says young girls have always thrown themselves at DJs and pop stars.
These people absolutely disgust me. They need to really get the facts right. All this is sensationalised.
I was absolutely raging because all I was seeing in the press at the time was star-struck teenagers, and that totally, it got to me.
And I had this image that I would be blamed, that somehow what happened to me wasn't real. I was making it all up. I don't know why I thought that, but I was making it all up. It wasn't real. And I wouldn't be believed at all.
It's the second day of Katie's trial. Her alleged abuser is now in his 40s. Katie and a friend claimed that he sexually abused them when they were 9 and he was 19. Today, Katie's father is being called as a witness to tell the jury what he saw.
It was a summer evening, I would say around about 8 to 8:30 time, a really hot summer's night. I went out to look for Katie, shouting her. She'd not heard me, so I walked up part of the village, then come back, and then I thought, oh, they might be down at the pond. They were all making dens. The kids have been making dens. And I saw Katie and her friend from the village in the den, and on the outside of the den, but looking into it, there was another guy there as well. But I never thought anything at the time because I didn't have any reason to think anything. So I just shouted, "Kate, time to come in." Okay. And then I set off walking back.
There was me and another girl, and him. He must have known that we had a den. And he said, "Oh, I've got some sweets. Shall we all go up there?" I can hear him. I can hear his voice. It kept saying, will you let me touch your fanny? I hate that word to this day. I absolutely hate it. And then he started hurting me.
We could always talk to each other, and I can't understand, even now, well, it took her till she was 15 to be able to tell me. If I'd have known that it would have been a really different situation, there's no way I'd have walked away from that. I'd have dragged him with scruff at neck back to our house and got the police after I'd given him a good kicking. But I didn't get a chance of that because I didn't know at the time. But even now, I'm so mad inside me that I feel as though I failed my daughter. I think to myself, you should have known. You should have known, you should have done something, but I didn't. And she said, it weren't your fault, Dad, and don't. Oh, God. Don't blame yourself. But, God, saying it, but I still do. I said, right, I'll have a word with your mum. No, I don't want you to tell my mum. She'll not be able to take this. So I had to bottle that up inside me for like 15, 16 years. I've had that inside me.
What's this like for you, Pat, to hear?
It's quite upsetting, actually. Because you've not really spoke to me, have you?
Even now, I can't because...
So I tried to talk to you, didn't I? After the police bit. You wouldn't speak, you just go and walk out. Wouldn't talk to you.
Yeah, I've got a lot of anger inside me.
Really been angry with me.
Yeah,
a lot of anger.
Yeah,
it's been taken out.
Yeah, it probably has. Yeah, because I mean, all these other families who've had to go through what we do. People on the outside looking in, they might think they understand it, but they don't. They don't know.
Let's go then.
In total, the accused man faces 10 charges. Katie and her friend corroborate one another on 5. The others will be Katie's word against his. The day after Dee Coles appeared on the news, ITV ran its documentary, The Other Side of Jimmy Savile.
So you were 16, you're in the back of this caravan, he was touching you. There comes a point where you say to him, you're not going the whole way. What was his response to that?
The documentary featured the testimony of 5 women detailing their sexual abuse at the hands of Jimmy Savile.
Before I knew what had happened, he'd stuck his tongue into my mouth. It didn't seem to bother him that other people could have seen. Looking back now as an adult, I realised he'd been grooming me by calling me at home and arranging to come. He was trying to take advantage of a 14-year-old child.
I watched the documentary and I cried all the way through it because I was physically and sexually abused as a child.
As the documentary was going out, helplines were deluged with calls. Some revealing details of abuse kept secret for decades.
Do you want to tell me what's prompted your call? Is it something that happened to you as a child that you want to talk about?
Yeah, if it's something you've never spoken about, then of course it's going to feel a bit odd for you.
Our calls doubled
and then tripled. And for the first time at the end of the month of October, we had 5,000 contacts.
I'm sorry I can't go into it in greater depth today, but we do have to sort of limit our call times because we've got a lot of calls coming in. But I will share the key information.
Lots of people calling through were really angry. They wanted to defy the cynics out there. They wanted to show them that this was true. They wanted their story to be heard.
It's all right, okay.
This documentary going out had for them just ripped something open.
Yeah, they were getting lots of phone calls of people like you who haven't spoken to anyone about it before. So it started to bring those triggers and those memories back up of their own abuse.
When you're sat in your front room and his face is on the telly a lot and in the papers a lot, you got nowhere to hide. You can't ever tuck stuff away then because it's real, it's there. Stoke Mandeville Hospital's got a chapel that we used to attend every Saturday evening. The times when Savile came, there used to be a little room and it was my job to go in there, get the collection plate. When I went into them rooms, he would start touching and pushing his fingers inside me and doing whatever he wanted to do in that little 5-minute space.
Why do you think he singled you out?
Because he knew what I was. He knew that I was, he knew I'd been abused for years. Not, you know, we do this, we have our own little gang of your eyes go down to the floor, your body language of hold yourself, you know, you're quite tense and they know that. You know, it's there. For people who that's what they get off on, they know. They know who you are. They know you've been primed, you've been touched, because straight away we know who they are. I knew who he was. I knew what he was. To me, it's what most people of importance did then. My grandfather was a policeman in Met Police, and a very powerful, big person. Because my abuse started very young, a toddler, I was very inward. So I didn't talk a lot. I was a very good, quiet child. So therefore nobody noticed me. I was just a good little kid. My granddad was my saviour. He was my abuser and he was my saviour. That gets really confusing because you've got somebody who's coming to fight your corner all the time, but that same person that's fighting your corner is also doing what they want to do to you. So that causes a mess. My communion pictures, I must have been 7. And I hated communion because my granddad, he told me that, you see, I was marrying God. So when you marry God, you have to have sex. So I knew on my confirmation and my Holy Communion that he would rape me afterwards. When I went to the door of the church, I really didn't want to go in. I kicked up such a fuss. And my mum was, you know, she was so mad because, of course, everybody else was happily going in there and all the parents were excited and all the kids were excited, where I was so mortified. And I look at the picture of that little girl. She looks so blatantly sad. She looks so sad. What was I? I was just a little kid whose life just got took. I felt like everything had let me down. Everybody had let me down. Any adult had let me down. And I was just on such a massive self-destruct that I didn't care about anybody. I was drunk. I slept with somebody, not a boyfriend. And I went to our little chemist and I took a pregnancy test there and it said I was pregnant. I have never been so happy in my entire life. Because I had my little baby and I would look after them and keep them safe. And I knew that I would love my own baby. I'd feel inside, because I could do this. This baby's done nothing to nobody. You know, nothing to nobody. It's not hurt nobody, not let nobody down. Will love me, regardless of, you know, that I'm dirty, that I'm used, that nobody really loves me. This baby will love me, and I will love this baby. And from that second, I must have been, because I had Gemma a couple of months after my 16th birthday. From that second on, I wanted life. I wanted life with every bit of me. Not a minute that goes past where I don't, you know, I'm like, cheers, girl. You know, she done the job. I only loved my daughter then. I didn't expect ever to love a man, not in my whole life. Yeah, I definitely had a game plan.
And what was that?
Just to give Jem a good dad and to a steady, safe environment. I think that's what done it in the end. I didn't feel like he asked anything from me.
Is that right, Jim?
Yeah. I know what it's done. Do you know what I mean? I just know what it's done, so I don't need to know the ins and outs of it all. I don't know if I want to know the ins and outs of it all, if I'm totally honest.
But you've never had a conversation about that?
Yeah. I don't want to have that in my head. Do you know what I mean? I don't want that. And I know you've got it in your head, but I don't want it in mine. So, I think I've got the best end of the deal here.
Don't be soapy, come on.
I know, but it's true. I don't want that in my head. I can't take that in my head.
Nothing prepared us for what was unleashed after the story broke. That first weekend, we had about 35 victims come forward. The scale of this was going to outstrip our policing structures.
The Savile revelations led the Metropolitan Police to launch a major inquiry, Operation U-Tree. Its commander, Peter Spindler, was thrust into the spotlight.
It's quite clear that he has perpetrated 4 decades of abuse, and it's vital that those that have been victims of that actually get the recognition and acknowledgement and support that they deserve. I don't think we could have done what we did with a live suspect. We would have kept very quiet. We would have come up with press lines that were, this is an ongoing criminal investigation and we're not prepared to discuss. The difference with Savile was I was prepared to take the risk that, okay, what's going to happen? A family member's going to sue me? I don't think you can defame a dead person. Now, I wasn't getting legal advice as we were doing this.
And you have no doubts now about Jimmy Savile?
At this stage, it's quite clear from what women are telling us that Savile was a predatory sex offender. As I stepped away from the camera, my press officer said to me, whispers in my ear, do you realise what you just said? You just said Savile's a predatory sex offender. I said, yeah, I'm fine with that. And of course, it is the lead news story and the front covers of the next day.
Scotland Yard has said that Jimmy Savile was a predatory sex offender who
carried out.
Fear that Savile was a predatory sex offender who could have abused up to 30 victims over 40 years.
Now that was a turning point for the inquiry, because the most important thing for victims is about being believed. And the fact that we were seen to be taking it seriously, and someone senior is standing in front of a camera saying essentially, "I believe you, tell us about what's happened," that just unleashed what was ultimately an exponential rise in reporting.
Tonight at 10, police are now pursuing more than 100 lines of inquiry about Jimmy Savile.
In the days following the Met's announcement, scores more victims came forward. Some went directly to the press. Among them, one of Savile's youngest victims, abused as a 9-year-old boy.
I wasn't to blame, so I thought that I'd tell the press. Sharon didn't want me to do it, but I just went out, phoned the press, made an appointment, and then we just done it.
Did you know that Kevin was going to call the Sun?
No idea. If I'd known then, I would never, ever, ever have let him done it. Never, ever in a million years.
But it's easy for me to speak to strangers. I tell them everything, but none of my close family couldn't do it. Couldn't tell Sharon it. Couldn't tell my brother it. How can, you know?
Do you know what happened to Kevin?
Not completely, no. Just bits and pieces, really, hasn't it? I've not read anything. I've not really heard anything as such. It's just what I've sort of picked up over here in your conversations, isn't it? Hiding in other rooms and whatever. I've not.
Really?
Yeah.
It sounds like you don't want to know.
I don't need to know unless Kevin wants me to know. I don't feel the need that I have to know. What I wish it had never happened. So by not knowing everything, I suppose in my mind it makes it easier for me to deal with.
The club leader wrote a letter with his idea, which was the milk float race around Brands Hatch. I got picked out. I was pretending to eat out of this horse bag with oats in it, but I actually ate them. It was just great fun. Even now, if I'm thinking about that day, it was just, you know, exciting. It was really, really good, and that was part of my childhood. We just assumed that the 8 of us was going to get our own badge, which was iconic in itself. Then we found out that we was just going to get one badge, one normal badge, but it was going to have a big ribbon, and they was going to put it around the whole group. And we was, you know, a bit disappointed. Savile approached me and asked me if I wanted my own badge for myself. Yeah, just jumped at it. I was led off the stage through some big double doors and then into a little room. I was fine. Just thought I was getting my badge. And he sat me down and then he just unbuttoned my shorts. There was a knock at the door. Man walked into the room, came over, watched for literally seconds, and then took part. He was like an animal. Savile actually stopped him, and then he issued a warning to me and a threat.
What did he say?
He said to me, like, "Don't you dare tell anyone. No one will believe you." And he called himself King Jimmy. And he said, "We know where you live." I just had to hide it.
How can someone keep such a big secret for so long? And sort of live your life normally, what you think's normal. Was that normal? It just makes everything you question everything, doesn't it, really? You know, you got the marriage, you got the friendship, you got the closeness, you've got it all, and then all of a sudden there's this great big wall that you didn't know about. And it just sort of makes everything think like, well, you know, if he can keep that from me, what else has he kept from me? And it does make you self-doubt, doesn't it, really, I suppose? Because obviously it's a big secret to carry around.
And where are you both at with that now?
Plodding along.
Yeah, that's probably right, plodding along.
For better, for worse. For richer, for poorer.
Yeah, that's it.
Why did Savile never have to face these allegations and pay for his crimes during his lifetime?
I just cannot understand how this remained hidden for so long.
With so many victims coming forward since Savile had died, the question now was how he'd escaped justice when he was alive. One organisation had the answer.
I said, have we ever had a Jimmy Savile allegation file on our desks? If so, when and where? And I want to have those looked at again. And initially, there was a trawl and a search, and a number of files were found. And I asked my principal legal advisor, then Alison Levitt QC, for those decisions to be looked at.
There were 4 allegations. They all had the hallmarks of credibility about them. When you heard what the complainants were saying, there was nothing about it you thought, well, that doesn't sound right. So why were the complainants saying that they didn't want to go ahead with them?
4 women had separately reported Savile to the police while he was alive. Savile was interviewed, but denied everything. The first woman to make an allegation was known as Miss C. She was interviewed by detectives.
What they said to her was, if you really want this pursued, we will do so, and we believe you, and we think that you're telling the truth. But we do need to warn you about what is likely to happen, because Jimmy Savile is a very rich, powerful, and famous man. Chances are nobody will believe you. He will have the best lawyers. It will all take place at a big court in London. You'll be cross-examined and you'll be made to look like a liar, and your name will be plastered all over the newspapers. The worst moment of it was when she said to the officers, if it's just about me, I don't want to take this any further. And I knew that it wasn't just about her, and I could see she hadn't been told that. And so this immediately raised the question of, if she had been told, would she have seen it differently? In fact, I went to see 4 of the victims, and each of them volunteered to me. If I'd known there were others, I would have been prepared to come forward.
How did you feel about that?
Really sad. It's sad for them.
Alison Levitt's report into the handling of the Savile allegations led to an overhaul of how the CPS and the police dealt with cases of child sexual abuse.
What was obvious to me was that these were not isolated examples. These were widespread difficulties and problems in the functioning of our criminal justice system and the approach that we'd taken. We owed it to those whose cases may not have proceeded to look again at their cases. And we set up the Victims' Right to Review scheme, where any victim whose case does not proceed can say to the prosecuting team, I want you to look again. And the significance of that scheme is the victim doesn't have to say why they think the decision was wrong. They don't need a lawyer. All they need to say is, I'm unhappy with the decision, will you look at it again?
What shall I do? I kind of want to do something normal. I could watch that.
Katie was one of the first people to benefit from that right to review. The CPS originally turned down her case, but changed its mind after she requested they look at it again.
Oh, it's Joseph.
Because I was getting some stuff for car, I just randomly bought myself a shirt, which is quite right. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Katie's husband Joe will be the next person to be cross-examined in the trial. With no forensic evidence, Joe's account of the effect the alleged abuse has had on their relationship will be key.
When we got together, we were charging around the countryside, walking, climbing, camping.
Just spending ridiculous.
Spending awesome time and money together. It were awesome. And then it was a case of, well, Katie felt she needed to say this before we embarked on a serious relationship. So that's when he told me.
That's when I first told you?
Yeah.
What did she tell you, Joe?
She told me that she'd been abused. It was just like, okay, what next? You know, it didn't really mean anything. You just think, oh, that's awful. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Carry on. I didn't imagine what it would mean or what it meant.
When did you first recognise it as a problem?
When we went on honeymoon.
That was awful.
Katie passed out on plane because she was so scared of having sex with me.
Were you aware of why she passed out?
No, I was watching a film.
Oh, this
on
is...
the plane, I was
honestly,
watching, what was it, Dukes of Hazzard? Starsky and Hutch or something.
And I was in the toilet for nearly the entire film. I think I knew before you, obviously, that there was a real...
Well, you had all these fears inside. I had all these, like, wild expectations, and Kate had all these wild fears. And it just, like, collided.
Yeah, it did. That's exactly
like some kind of explosion.
I can't shake off feeling filthy and dirty. And I'm just bombarded by sensations of then. I know it's an incredible loss for Joe. I know that.
It's an incredible loss for you as well, that you can't feel about it how I feel about it. You know, something's been taken from you that'll never get back. And now we'll never properly share what we could have done.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is just incredibly, incredibly sad. And I can't do anything about it.
With the police and Crown Prosecution Service forced to investigate Savile's crimes, it was the turn of another British institution to become the story, the BBC. Not only had Savile abused children on BBC premises, but almost a year before his crimes were revealed, it had filmed, but never shown, this interview with Karen Ward.
He promised me that if I gave him oral sex, that he would arrange for me and my friends to go to Television Centre and be on his television show.
The BBC stood accused of a cover-up.
The allegations and what seems to have happened are completely appalling and I think are shocking the entire country. And these allegations do leave many institutions, perhaps particularly the BBC, with serious questions to answer.
It was an inconvenient story, a very inconvenient story for the BBC. You know, you look at how much damage it could do. It could damage other BBC presenters and entertainers. The BBC could be sued for damages. The whole culture of the BBC would come under scrutiny at a time when the BBC's in a vulnerable position.
I've been asked not to do interviews, but yes, obviously I'm happy that our story is out there.
The ensuing crisis marked the beginning of the end for the BBC's Director General, George Entwistle. In the inquiries that followed, no evidence was found of a cover-up. But the BBC was heavily criticised for a culture that had allowed Savile's abuse to go undetected for decades.
There was a degree of internal knowledge about Jimmy Savile. And I think, you know, a lot of how the BBC behaved was as other institutions behaved. The people making the complaints are sidelined, they are disbelieved, they are seen as not credible and often blamed for something that they weren't at all responsible for. And in that way, actually, I think the BBC behaved exactly as other institutions did.
Attention then turned to another institution, the NHS. Investigations were launched into Savile's activities at 13 hospitals and a hospice. One of the biggest took place in Savile's hometown of Leeds. It was led by former detective Ray Galloway.
I thought, as a result of my career in the police service, which I saw some pretty harrowing sights and dealt with some really nasty people, that Savile would be quite straightforward. He wasn't. I didn't think I'd need support. I had that traditional view of, I've got no problem, I've seen this all before. I hadn't. We put screensavers on all of the organisational computers, posters all around the hospital, and the message was out. And over a period of time, it started to gather momentum. Savile's victims at Leeds range from 5 to 75. They were patients, they were visitors, they were staff, they were people who worked with him.
I saw a poster about speaking out, and I had to think about it for a long time.
How long did you think about it for?
Months.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It was just towards they were closing up doing all the interviews that I went. I think I wanted to be believed. And I thought, this is my one chance. If I don't do it now, I'm going to go to my grave with it.
She came in, you would think from her appearance that she would be a confident lady. She was anything but. She was a shell. She was shaking, she was tearful, and she just wanted to tell her story.
I had to go to the head porter. There was Jimmy Savile, sat there, laid in the chair in his office. And he came up to me and said, would you like to go for a cup of tea? I've got to go to my mother's house. And we could have a cup of tea there. And sort of being a bit starstruck and a bit curious, I thought, oh, okay. Yeah, why not? Off we went in his white Rolls Royce. He pushed me back, undressed. I think he might have seen the look of sheer horror and shock on my face. And he says, don't worry, I've had a vasectomy. And I just froze. And I did actually say, stop this, I don't want it. And he didn't. It was very cruel. I thought I somehow asked for it.
And how long did you feel that?
Until about 2 or 3 years ago. I would get so depressed. I had anorexia as well. I had absolutely no confidence in myself. I hated myself. I just felt I was branded. The only person I ever told was my husband before we got married.
She told you, you sort of became complicit in that secrecy.
It wasn't
secret. It was shame, wasn't it?
What?
You were ashamed of it.
No, but how did you?
I wasn't ashamed of it. I was trying to. Your shame. I wasn't complicit in your secrecy. I was complicit in keeping your shame away from other people, so it didn't affect you.
Yes.
I was trying to protect you on that basis.
I had a great deal of effect on my husband because he had to cope, because I was in hospital quite a few times.
Anorexia was the physical manifestation, which was frightening, very frightening. You nearly copped it a couple of times, didn't you? I couldn't. I had to watch Pauline eat. I used to panic if she didn't. I used to say, have something. Don't want anything. Have a little. Have some milk in your coffee. Have some breakfast. Have some tea. Have a bit of lunch. Have this, that and the other. To become to the point where I was becoming really, really, really boring. Because I was petrified that she was going to sink back into this awful illness, this anorexia, which is a killer. And I thought, one more time, she ain't going to survive. And that frightened me. I couldn't get the mental problem, and it never occurred to me until afterwards that the root of it, the very, very root of it, was right back down there at the LGI.
She was taken into the interview room and we had a chat with her, and it was clear that she had not consented in any way with Savile. He had taken advantage of her, he'd forced himself on her, and I don't think she really knew what had happened to her.
It wasn't until Ray explained, when I told him all the details, that he said, that is rape. He gave me the actual definition, and he said, this is what happened to you. So I said, do you believe me? He said, yes.
What was that like?
I was so relieved.
And then it was as though a great weight had been lifted from her because she could talk about it without feeling worried, without feeling ashamed, without feeling disgusted with herself. And all of a sudden she was Pauline, properly Pauline. She was there, and I always knew she was under there somewhere. And I thought, oh, good, this is what I've been waiting for.
We got there in the end.
Yeah. We did.
Sorry, darling.
It's all right.
To have caused you so much hassle over
It's
the
all
years.
right.
I've just hit that wave of anxiety. I don't even know what I'm doing.
Following me.
Yeah, probably a good idea. We'll be giving evidence, or being cross-examined actually. It's going to be scary.
Almost have a car crash into near miss and your legs go like jelly.
Yeah.
You feel sick.
Yeah, it's like that.
It's a bit like that.
I hate being perceived as weak. I hate it. And that's my whole thing about being a vulnerable victim sort of thing. I can't stand it.
Katie's case came to us 4.5 years ago. Although you could see she was vulnerable, you could also see she was quite strong as well.
If you want to tell me then what it is you want us to know.
You could see it was very difficult for her to verbalise the things that had happened to her. She was unable to say certain parts of the anatomy, but she was articulate.
And on the path, this little, sort of bit like a bridle way, we'd made a den.
She gave a good and clear and concise account.
Nearly 5 years since first going to the police, Katie is going to be cross-examined by the defence, who'll challenge her version of events.
I don't think anybody would relish or enjoy somebody
question their reliability. They're going to try and say that the witness is telling lies.
Right, I've got to go, bye.
Bye-bye. Good luck, darling, good luck. We all love you.
I'll be in the gallery. Okay.
We love you. See you shortly. See you very soon, babe.
Oh my God.
I love you.
Please.
It's the fear that they've had all their lives that nobody will believe them. It's playing to their biggest fears.
You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
Bye, darling. Is it left here, Kate? Kate, is it left here?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
She said that you grew 10 feet.
You did. You grew 10 feet.
What do victims say it's like?
More often than not, they'll say, I would never do that again. Yeah.
The jury will deliver its verdict tomorrow. More than 500 men and women came forward saying they were victims of Savile. But because he was dead, they would never have their day in a criminal court. Many turned to the civil courts for recognition that they had been abused.
I think the word compensation is a horrible word. I get very cross with people who portray me as someone who is only doing this for compensation. It's not. It is a recognition. And in Savile, that was all that they were able to achieve. Savile was now dead, so the only remedy they had was to pursue an action against his estate. But the effects on you have obviously been very, very, very serious. It happened to you at a very early age when you were extremely impressionable, and it's clearly... We knew that there wasn't going to be enough in the Savile estate to go round because of the quantity of the victims. But what's important is that no one is above the law. There were other allegations against him, weren't there? Since Savile, people have felt empowered to try and seek justice. People now feel, I'm not going to sit on this forevermore. I have to do something now. I have to do something in my lifetime while someone can be prosecuted, or I'm going to regret it.
That need for justice led Operation U-Tree to take a dramatic turn.
Hundreds of other people have come forward to complain about people other than Jimmy Savile. They believe this will be a watershed moment in the prosecution of sexual offences.
Okay, ladies and gents, good morning and welcome to the goal group for Operation U-Tree. There will be living suspects who need to be dealt with. Those suspects may well provide a threat to children today, and I think we all need to be prepared for the profile and the publicity. We knew fairly quickly that there were going to be live suspects that we were going to have to deal with. I knew that these cases had to be investigated. It doesn't matter how old the offending was, it is still live for those victims. So, again...
The most prolific living offender investigated by U-Tree was former DJ Chris Denning. He was charged with 41 sexual offences against boys as young as 9. 26 men were willing to testify against him. One of them was Dave.
Why would you like to be anonymous for this interview?
I never want my mum to know that she
wasn't there to stop this, it'd kill her.
What effect do you think meeting Chris Denning has had on you?
I think it stopped me loving. I've got this new annoying thing I do. So when I feel something, it's like pushing down on it. Don't let it out. I suppose if you can think of taking every emotion you've ever had in your life and boxing it up, that's what sits inside me, ready to explode. And occasionally it explodes. And when that explosion goes on, people don't see it coming. They don't think they've done anything, but somewhere inside that pressure's just gone poof. I was sort of sitting there pondering life, as you do, or as I do. And sort of Chris popped into my head. So I decided to Google the effects of child abuse. How does it manifest itself as an adult? And so I Googled it, and this is where I can. There was this list of 10 things. Yeah, I'm sure I got 7 or 8 out of 10. Cutting yourself off, anger, risk takers, lack of emotion. It was, for me, the saddest thing I'd ever read. You think, God, you know, if it wasn't for all this, I would still be. You wouldn't have all the regret. All the people you've loved and pushed away.
How did you meet?
We met online.
Which one?
Plenty of Fish.
I explained what had happened to me. So she was the first person I'd ever told about it.
What was it like to tell someone?
Horrible. Makes it real.
I was absolutely out of my depth, but I just wanted to try and encourage him, you know, to get counselling.
Did you want to go for counselling, Dave?
No. Don't mean to telling people.
He hated it.
She would be trying to make me feel this stuff, and I would do anything not to. So, yeah, she'd bring something up and I'd just change the subject or move away from it. I want to show you feelings and how I feel, just no one else.
Dave was able to testify at Chris Denning's trial, and his evidence was key in securing a conviction. The DJ was sentenced to 13 years in prison. It was Operation U-Tree's first successful prosecution. But by now, police forces across the country were being overwhelmed by hundreds of new cases of historical abuse.
I've got Rosemary. Who else? Kathy.
In Manchester, 3 women had come forward with allegations about a local DJ, Ray Terrett.
OK, Ray, you're currently under arrest on suspicion of the following: the rape of in 1962, the rape and unlawful sexual intercourse and sexual assault of Kathy Lansborough in 1972 and 1973.
I have no idea who they are.
OK.
I was one of the first 3 to come forward. I decided I'll give evidence against Terrett. Would they believe me? Would anyone believe me over him?
Ray Terrett, who's 72, was given bail and told to appear at the Crown Court next month.
And then when it went out on the news, That was when everyone started to come forward, and it's like, bring them on, because I know you're there.
It was just by luck that I had the television on that day. Ray Terrett was coming out of court denying the charges that were brought against him. And he was smiling and waving, and that did something to me. It changed me. And I knew I had to do something. I rang the 3 children and told them to be here on the Monday night at 7 o'clock.
She just didn't sound like herself. She just said, what I'm going to tell you, I never wanted to tell you.
I said in 1960, I was raped by Jimmy Savile and Ray Terrett. To see the kids, they were crying and they were hugging me, and the hurt that had caused them by telling them, you know.
My mum said, it's over now. And I got angry then, what do you mean it's over? She said, I never even wanted to tell yous and upset yous. It's angered me that I've had to do this. But now it's over. We forget it. I said, I can't forget this.
And she went home, found out who he was, and rang the police the next day. So really, without her, none of this would have happened, really. I'd never dreamed of the trial and everything like that.
By the time Terrett's trial began, 17 women had come forward to testify against him.
Ray Terrett in court, when he was questioned, that was nice. It was nice to see him lying in court, lie, because that's all he did, lie.
It sounds like part of you really enjoyed it.
I did enjoy the cross-examination because I got my story across. And I did it and come back and she saw my face.
It was like a different woman.
All the lines had gone and the age had gone. It was like I'd gone back to the 60s and nothing had happened. It'd all come out of me, you know. The judge just wiped the floor with him. He sentenced him to 25 years, which I couldn't believe it. And everybody clapped. And when he came up for the verdict, he had his head down. He never looked at nobody. And the same when he went down. He was just an old, evil, broken man.
And how did you feel about that?
Good.
I would start getting nervous when I get ready.
Preparation.
Yeah, it is. It's important, the prep. That's, well, it is for me anyway. Want to be smart, want to feel like me. And flipping, God knows what it'll be like today.
The jury delivers its verdict today. There are 10 sex offence charges alleged to have been carried out on Katie or her friend 24 years ago, just yards from Katie's family home.
I think it's broke us a bit as a family, and it really has. Because we used to be so happy.
Even when I go to bed at night, I can be...
You wake up, don't you?
I wake up in early hours of the morning and I've been dreaming. It's about the court case. And I've not been a witness for the prosecution. I were in the defendant's box and I were in there. And I can remember the judge saying, you're guilty, take him down. And I'm thinking, well, I haven't done anything wrong. But somewhere in my head, I have.
Something happened that wasn't right. I want a formal acknowledgement of what happened to me. Being believed is important. It is important.
The accused has been found guilty of 5 of the 10 charges, 4 indecent assaults and 1 act of gross indecency, where Katie and her friend were both present. The jury didn't find him guilty of the charges where it was Katie's word against his.
Why don't they believe me?
They don't believe me. They believe him.
I don't think it's a case of belief. It's not a personal verdict. It's not personal against her. It's against the evidence. I'm happy that we got the guilty verdict for the 5 that we did. And we've safeguarded every child that comes into contact with him for the remainder of his life, so it's a good verdict.
It's probably the most hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my whole entire life. And I don't deal with it very well sometimes. But it's almost like a road that was always going to be travelled down anyway. Even if it made our relationship worse, I think we were always going to do this. We don't know if it will make our relationship worse. In another 6 months' time, we might find that we're really struggling with something because of this. And then we'll look back and go, well, was it worth it for that? I don't know. And as I say, the road was always going to be taken. So we just live with the outcome of it, really.
Katie, tree line on the right, yeah? That's what you want to be aiming for. I'll go on the other side of you. All right?
I just started swimming. It's just an amazing feeling being in the middle of a lake. Kind of become a part of it. It's a place where I put my anger, knowing that I can swim the length of it, knowing that I'm not weak, I'm not vulnerable. I've got to keep swimming.
U-Tree has now run its course. It's been almost 3 years. It's synonymous with Savile. He's dead. The reality is, it's actually just the beginning, because we look at what has been termed the U-Tree effect and the consequences of what was uncovered. That leads to what is going to be Britain's biggest ever public inquiry into child sexual abuse. I think as a society we have some real issues to confront. U-Tree is just the end of the beginning.
The relief. I haven't kept it a secret. It's pure and utter relief, and for some reason that has allowed me to start being who I am and want to be.
All the people that matter have believed me. So yeah, that's a great big thing for me. That's the most important thing.
Good people who listened but didn't hear before are really listening now, and they are hearing.
This isn't just a product of the 70s, and this isn't just something that happened to hundreds of us then. You know, it's still happening.
For details of organisations which offer advice and support with child or adult sexual abuse, go online or call the BBC Action Line to hear recorded information on 0800 077 077. Lines are open 24 hours and calls are free from landlines and mobiles.